It is my privilege and joy that we can continue our Bible study on death, dying, and life everlasting, and concluding this study with this last presentation with the subtitle, All Things New. We started this study with the question, how could in a perfect creation, the image of a perfect God, something contrary to his way of being occur? How could things come into existence which are the opposite for our needs? How could lies, unkindness, injustice, pain, suffering, and death come into existence if God is a good God? These questions we have answered in this series. And we want to conclude what we have learned in a shortest way I can put it together. So everything started with the self-deception of Lucifer in order that he thought he could change his species, his identity. He thought he can become a god. The same was tempted Adam, to put God under question. But you cannot question God except you become as high as he is. So this was never a choice, because God couldn't give a choice to something that's impossible. You see, if Lucifer or Adam would have tried to do something reasonable, that would be a choice. But in front of a cement wall, which is thick, to try to get through it doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. Now, if you have a glass wall so that you don't see the glass, you might enter in and get aware, oh, I didn't see it. But when you see it and you still try it, it remains inexplicable. It remains inexplicable because it is completely impossible. God cannot give anyone a choice for something impossible. It's never possible to change your species. To see how absurd this is, to illustrate this absurdity, imagine yourself that a rose could become an apple tree, or an apple tree could become a rose, which is impossible. God made a barrier there, and God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. So we see the attempt today of humanity of trying to combine species, which is not possible. To think to create a new species. I don't know if you saw this small movie about Ecto World, where babies can be made in an artificial womb. And there is no danger there. There's no risk of any disease or miscarriage because it's all under the control of this technical womb where the baby can grow. It's all better than God made it. No risk factors. You can even choose to say if your child wants to be super intelligent or not so intelligent, because you can master the combination of the genes. We don't know. It's a mystery how they wanted to get through the wall. But we see it. It's reality. We still do it. Try the impossible. But the impossible remains impossible. A fish cannot become a hen, and a hen cannot become a fish. And God created great whales and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. There is no change of species. There was never a chance that Adam could become God or God could become Adam, because there is an absolute wall between a cause and an effect. God being the cause cannot become the effect, and the human being the effect cannot become the cause. This should all give our reason enough food to not try anymore the impossible. But even today we see it. How they want to be changing their species, want to change their genetics, want to change their sex because they want the gender, because they think, this is it. And God created man in his own image. He's a creature. He was made by a wise God. He made him. And so he's an image of God. But he cannot be God. And God saw everything that he had made. And behold, it was very good. All was fine. So how then could disbelief and a breach of trust in God, a separation from God happen? How did it come into this world? It did not come through a choice. It did not come by eating the fruit of that tree. That was the effect of it. The disbelief and the separation from God came through an attempt of an impossibility to change its own species. To go and become a cause while you are an effect. Lucifer never could become a god, and Adam never can become a god. They believe it, we believe it now, we see it. But it's a total impossibility. It's making no sense of nothing. That's why it remains a mystery. There's never a choice to, when you see the wall and still want to go through it. That's self-deception, because God cannot give you a choice to go to something that is impossible. And it doesn't make sense to try it. Doesn't make sense to try it. But now that it happened, we can see it everywhere. How it came into existence is a mystery. That it is now so that humans believe they're gods, that humans believe they can change their species, and then evolution just proves in their sight that out of one species can come another one. Everything can come from everything, which is just an impossibility. So we have a terrible state that we inherit from Adam. And the question is there a way out? And how would that look like to come out of this? Now, understanding that the spirit is a closed system. There is nothing from outside can come into it. He cannot be controlled from outside. He controls himself from the inside. And so whatever happens in him, it is his own sphere. God created him in his image to have this sphere, which he made to be a good one. But deception brought the problem. And the spirit must be always active. He can never be passive. So these three basic functions we should never forget. So if there is any situation that can help a spirit, is he must realize things. So the emergence of evil was not an external act, but an internal attempt to change its state, its identity, to change the species. So this was an internal thing, nothing else external. Now, of course, what is internal comes out. But this change, this internal change, since it is an impossibility, could only occur through self-deception. You must deceive yourself if you take a run to go through a cement wall. There cannot be reason there, because it's not possible. It must be self-deception to try the impossible. Now, in order to come out from here, the spirit must see that he is in self-deception. He must recognize his inner state of self-deception in order to then let it go and replace it with the truth. If we don't see the effects of running through the wall, of trying the impossible, and all disease and all our problems come because we try the impossible. We are unreasonable. So here comes the offering of God. He puts us to reason. When we see the effects of the trying of the impossibility, when we see the wounds of our body, then we might be able to think that what we attempt is never going to happen. I had this week a lady about 44 years old, and she has 2 children which have some health issues. And so she came with the youngest one, and I asked her to come for counseling, and she should see my presentations that I have on the Law of Life channel in German. And so she watched the presentations and came for counseling. And I was very happy because she understood it right and correctly. So we saw in her history that she was attempting the impossible. We saw that she was in a situation where she had no way out. Now, she understood that all, what I shared, and we talked about it. But then, towards the end of the conversation, she said, "You suggest in your presentation that we need to change the source where we are dependent on, and it must be God." And I said, "Yes." And she said, "But what do you do with people like me who don't believe in God? I don't believe that there is something above me." And I said to her, "Look, there is no alternative. There is no alternative. We are dependent. And where do you want to take your love? We are dependent on water. If there would be no water, then we could not have this dependency on water. And if we need love as our first need, then how can it be that we have no source for it? We don't find love in nature. We don't find it by our neighbors. We don't find it by our mother and brothers. Where do we find love that we need so desperate?" And so I was happy to appeal to reason and to show her that she cannot be independent. But I was glad that she did not reject the input that I gave her. So we scheduled another appointment to go deeper into the subject. If a reason cannot be satisfied, if reason cannot be reached, there is no way out. So when self-knowledge and the recognition of the error is no longer possible, then there is no way out anymore. Even if there would exist a created way out or not. Because you must apply it. The Spirit must himself let go of the error in order to take the truth. But he will never let go of the error if he doesn't see it. The Spirit was made to live from the truth. And he will keep everything he believes is true. But when he sees that what he believes is wrong, he might just give it away and replace it with that what he sees is the truth. So Lucifer and the deceived angels had reached the state of no return. That is, even though they saw the effects of their impossible try, they broke their reason and still went on. And when reason is broken, God has no tool to bring the Spirit, because the Spirit was made to govern himself. He must do things out of conviction, not because someone is constraining him to do it. He must do it out of conviction. So when conviction cannot happen anymore, salvation is not possible. For humans, God found a way out. But even this way out must be understood in order to be applied in the own life. So, to illustrate this, Adam came on the path of death. This path of death begins with Adam's sin. We know it's the second death. There is no way out. And everyone who is born here on earth is born into this path of death. He comes in a death life, on which end is the lake of fire. That is this path of death. So the only way out was, before this path ends, there should be a salvation from the cause of it, that is, to die by faith. So the cross brings a solution before the lake of fire comes into activity. So if we die before, it's a death that God made in his Son and made a new man, created the path of life. And this path of life starts with the resurrection of Jesus. Now he was crucified from the beginning of the world, so even though he did it later through the symbol of the sacrificial animals, by faith, the same thing happened in Abel, in Adam, because they took the new life and they gave up their own life and killed the animal. So everyone is on the path of life who is born again, who is born from above. And the end of this path of life is the New Jerusalem. It's the new creation. So this is, in a most simple way, how God solved the human problem, to offer everyone who was born on the path of death to have a way out before ye reach the lake of fire. So how did God do this? He added to his divinity humanity. This was the only way to come into the spirit of man, because he cannot be governed from outside. So God conceived in Mary Jesus Christ, the human Jesus Christ. And by the law of inheritance, he inherited 50% of his spirit from God and 50% of his body from God, like he inherited 50% of his spirit from his mother and 50% body from his mother. So he inherited from his Father the truth in his spirit. So the inheritance, the spiritual inheritance that Jesus got from his Father was the truth about himself. So in the moment of conception, he connected to his Father, because this connection is an automatism. It is unconscious, because no one can function without having a connection. In our lives, when we are conceived by a human parent, the spirit immediately connects to Mother Spirit, because it cannot exist from himself. It's impossible. So the Spirit of Christ connected to his Father by the truth that was in him. And he also inherited the lie from his mother, because he came to overcome this. He came into a death life. Flesh and blood is a dead life. And being in this dead life, he came to destroy the cause of death. So now, making companionship, the Son with the Father, in a work that they did together, they destroyed the sting of death. They destroyed the error from the human spirit to believe that he's a God. On the cross, when Jesus cried, "It is finished," that thing was eliminated from his spirit, forever gone. But he was still in a dead life. So that's why he must die completely. The spiritual battle, the extermination of the spiritual error must be done during your life. It's impossible to not do it while you're dead. You must be alive to do it. And so that happened. But now the whole human being, flesh and blood, the dead life, cannot inherit the kingdom of God. Jesus could not come down from the cross and say, "Now I go to heaven because I eliminated." No, the whole being was irrecuperable. So he went into that sleep of death in order to, through that, recreate the man coming out from the grave, the firstborn Son of God. He now didn't have anything from Mary anymore. He was 100% from his Father. It was God's new creature. He was the second Adam. He now was immortal. And this new being is it's our inheritance. This new life is that which gives us eternity. Because this new life has all the conditions for eternity in it. Because the separation between human and God is not possible anymore. So this is the great offer. This is the great thing that God gives to the world. He made it all through His Son. They together made salvation possible. But every human with reason gets a choice. God cannot do it for me. He did it for the human life because we are all one life. But we have different individuals. And each spirit must do it himself. That's why we get one choice. And Jesus says in Luke 20:18, very simple. Every human being will have only two ways to go, but only one is a choice. And that is, He says, whosoever shall fall upon that stone shall be broken, which is him. So you must be broken. Something must be put away, must die. And that is the cross. It's a final thing. Who dies on the cross resurrects in the new man. Because that's a thing that we do by faith. Christ did it in reality. But we take that by faith and it becomes by faith our life. So this is what He offers. This is the only choice we have. If people remain in the state they are born, He will fall upon them and will grind him to powder. So this is the lake of fire. It's the end of the road of death, because there it is final destruction. It goes into inexistence. So whoever remains like he is born, he will have the end, the lake of fire, the final destruction. And he who today sees by reason that he can get rid of the error of his mind through faith and live through faith in the new life, in the new Adam, he can experience that. It works. It brings rest to the mind. It brings health to the body. If people understand their state of being from birth. So this is where I bring my patients. They must understand where they are here. And they must see how evil it is with them when they remain in deception. They must feel how it hurts when you believe things that are not right. And then they might reason and say, wow, there's a way out. Yes, there is a way out. God made it. It's not man-made. But God cannot apply it for us. I must do it. I must take that new life. I must go together with Christ to the cross. In the Old Testament, it was the sinner who had to kill the animal. It was the sinner who had to exchange his life by putting his hand on that animal's head. It was the sinner who had to do his taking that what God has put him to this position. It was his act. God provided the lamb. God provided everything. But to use it, to apply it, can never be done by God, because the law does not permit that. God gave me the action to drink, to eat, to walk, to think. He cannot take that away. I must do it. I could not save myself anymore. I was caught in. If God would have not made this way, this path of life, we would all end up here, or would not even exist, because God not want anyone to exist. We only exist because we can escape this and go through the cross into a new life that is eternal and not into an eternal death. So, as man, when he sinned, was completely lost. So the earth, when the king of the earth disconnected from the source of life, it is evident that that which is connected to him cannot survive. So that's why we see after 6,000 years the destruction of the earth because of man's disconnection from God. So even there are still beautiful places on this earth because God in his grace kept those. But even these beautiful places are destroyed by sinfulness of man. That's why they are not recuperable. This earth must end up as well in the lake of fire. Peter describes it in his 3rd chapter, in his 2nd letter. The earth will melt in the fire. All elements will melt in that final fire that must destroy, must melt everything so that God can create a new world, a new heaven and a new earth. We read in Revelation 21:1, and I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. So, out of that melted element, he creates a new one, exactly like he created out of the old elements of the human being, of his body and his spirit. He made a new one through Christ and in Christ. So, this is our hope, that soon Jesus will come the second time. And after then, the 1,000 years, this final thing will happen. Now, finally God has restored his universe. It is perfect again. Everything that was not good was now eliminated through the lake of fire. How did God do it? Did he do it by force or by might? No, he did it by appealing to the reason of his created beings that have a spirit. All questions regarding God are solved. The saved ones, they agreed with the principle to live by love. They got by reason the conviction the way God made things to be cannot be changed. And they agreed to it to function like that because it is fun to live with love. It gives us the best emotion to love and to work unselfishly. The saved ones were convinced. Not only those who have sinned like we have, but the whole universe. They are all convinced the way God did things is like they also would do it. They agree to it. They're one with it. There's no separation anymore possible. God solves the problem by answering the questions about him. On the one side, he shows where the evil goes and what result it brings. So he gives that room. And on the other side, he shows how he deals with the humans that have deceived themselves and how he wants to save them and how he put everything into action. An effort that is unequal with any effort that God has done to save us as his creatures. So he solves the problem in a spiritual way by answering the question, because it was spiritual questions that were there. And the spirit must be convinced that this is so because I like it so. And I agree with it. If not, no one can be there. But even those who have been in the lake of fire, consumed, before that, acknowledged that they were wrong and God was right. The reason was there that there was nothing they could reprove God for. There was nothing they could tell him that would have been unrighteous or unloving. And by this, God solves the conflict that arose to the self-deception, through self-deception. So, here in this chapter 21 and Revelation verse 4, it says, "And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes." Why do they have tears in their eyes? Well, the lake of fire is something that we see. And it does not go away not being touched by that. Because love is touched by the suffering. And Zechariah says, there will be great, great weeping. Every nation, every tribe will weep. Why? Because they have lost souls there. They're not the weeping of the lost, it's the weeping of the saved. Because there is a pain, a deep pain for the lost one. And God, finally, when it's all over, wipes away all tears from their eyes. And there shall be no more death. Why? Because it's put in the lake of fire. There will be no more death. What a relief. We can wipe up our tears because it's over. There will be no more death. But it continues and says here, neither sorrow nor crying, and neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. Now I sometimes wonder about my fellow Christians who read the same Bible like me, and when they read this, how can they believe in an everlasting pain? Because it says here, it's over. No more crying, no more sorrow, no more pain. Well, if they would be in that lake of fire for eternity, they would continually sorrow, they would continually cry, they would continually be in pain. And then the first things would have not passed away. And he that sat upon the throne said, behold, I make all things new. Where is then there the lake of fire? When everything is new, will the earth always be melted? No. After she's melted and recreated, everything will be new. And he said unto me, write, for these words are true and faithful. So a recurrence of self-deception is excluded because all are in conviction there. It's not there that they are just unconvinced. No. They could only be put again into the circuit of benevolence, in the circuit of the universe, because they agreed to it and got rid of self-deception. And they would never even touch it because they have the remembrance of it. And when God has created everything new, for all eternity, life will continue in complete harmony. That is the end of this conflict that went about 7,000 years. From the perspective of heaven, it's a small time. From our perspective, every minute of pain is too much. So God in His mercy made it short, but still enough that every spirit's reason should be convinced. So that is our choice. Well, I would like that my error, my sinful nature would be wiped away. Better today than tomorrow. But I must co-work with God until that day of total freedom will come. And as we live in these last days of this world's history, our destiny will be decided while we're alive. And God wants to prepare us, not only to eradicate the evil from us, but by becoming His ambassadors for the last work, for the last invitation, that we bring to the world that message that they be reconciled with God. What a privilege we have to do that work. Let us be found faithful. Amen.